In a world before fast food chains and microwave dinners, families gathered around the table for suppers that carried both comfort and class. Betty Crocker once filled American kitchens with recipes that promised warmth, elegance, and togetherness. But here's the twist: many of those iconic suppers have almost completely vanished. Think about it: golden chicken croquettes crisp from the skillet, or a bubbling pork and bean casserole straight from the oven. These weren't just meals, they were centerpieces of family life, carrying stories of post-war kitchens, church potlucks, and Sunday gatherings. Yet today, they've been left behind, replaced by shortcuts and takeout menus. In this video, we're uncovering 12 old Betty Crocker suppers nobody cooks anymore. From shrimp and noodle bakes to the once elegant lobster Newberg Supreme, each dish tells the tale of a time when cooking wasn't just about feeding the family, it was about crafting tradition. So stay tuned, because by the end of this journey, you might just find yourself wondering why these suppers ever disappeared, and maybe even be tempted to bring one back to your own table. And before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe for more nostalgic stories of America's forgotten foods. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Part 01: Chicken Croquettes. Imagine a dish so elegant, yet so comforting, that it could turn leftover chicken into a dinner worthy of company. That was the magic of chicken croquettes. Popularized in mid-20th century American kitchens, especially through Betty Crocker's cookbooks, these golden, crisp patties were a clever blend of thrift and sophistication. Families often made them after Sunday roasts, stretching what was left into something brand new, crispy on the outside, creamy and savory within. The process was almost ritualistic. Cooks finely chopped chicken, folded it with breadcrumbs, milk, butter, and a hint of onion or parsley, then shaped the mixture into neat cylinders or patties. Each was dipped in egg, rolled in crumbs, and fried until golden brown. Served with cream gravy or a tangy sauce, they carried both comfort and refinement. But croquettes weren't just about taste, they were about presentation. In the post-war years, when entertaining neighbors or church groups was common, dishes like this showed care and creativity. It was proof that even simple ingredients could be transformed into something extraordinary. Many 1950s and 60s home cooks took pride in serving croquettes on patterned platters, paired with peas, carrots, or a fresh garden salad. Over time, as convenience foods rose and fried dishes lost favor, croquettes slowly vanished from the average dinner table. Yet their memory lingers, tied to a slower era when cooking meant resourcefulness and meals carried a sense of pride. Chicken croquettes remind us that forgotten suppers weren't just recipes, they were traditions, passed from kitchens where nothing went to waste, and everything was made with love. If you're enjoying this trip back in time, stick around, because the next dish is a hearty classic that once filled ovens across America: pork and bean casserole. Part 02: Pork and bean casserole. Few dishes speak to hearty American comfort like the pork and bean casserole. Once a beloved staple in Betty Crocker's lineup, it combined affordability, warmth, and flavor into a single bubbling dish. In mid-century America, when feeding a hungry family of 6 on a budget was an everyday challenge, this casserole was the answer. At its core, it was simple: tender beans slow-baked with tomato sauce, onions, and seasonings, layered with chunks of pork or slices of hot dogs, then topped with breadcrumbs or cheese for a satisfying finish. The magic, though, wasn't just in the ingredients, it was in how it brought people together. Picture a chilly 1950s evening. The casserole dish, heavy and hot, comes out of the oven, filling the kitchen with a savory aroma. Kids gather around the table, and parents scoop generous servings onto plates. Every bite carried a smoky, tangy sweetness that was both filling and familiar. It wasn't fancy, but it was dependable, a dish that promised everyone would leave the table satisfied. This casserole often appeared at church potlucks, neighborhood gatherings, and weeknight suppers. It was easy to stretch, making it perfect for large crowds. And in post-war America, where thrift and practicality ruled, pork and bean casserole represented the ideal balance of comfort food and frugality. Yet as tastes shifted and processed foods gained popularity, casseroles like this lost their spotlight. Today, they linger only in old cookbooks and the memories of those who grew up with them. The pork and bean casserole tells us something important: meals didn't need to be glamorous to matter. They just needed to fill bellies and bring families together, and that's exactly what this forgotten supper did best. Up next, we'll uncover a dish that blended land and sea in a way few remember: shrimp and noodle bake. Part 03: Shrimp and Noodle Bake. Imagine a dish that brought a touch of the sea into everyday American kitchens, a casserole so creamy and comforting that it felt like a small celebration at the dinner table. That was the shrimp and noodle bake, a forgotten Betty Crocker classic that thrived in the mid-20th century. This dish was a clever blend of ingredients that were accessible yet felt indulgent. Tender noodles formed the base, while plump shrimp were mixed with a creamy, buttery sauce, often enriched with cheese or a hint of paprika. Some home cooks added peas or diced pimentos for color, turning the casserole into a visual centerpiece as well as a flavorful meal. Once baked until bubbling and lightly browned on top, it was a dish that invited everyone to gather around and savor every bite. Shrimp and noodle bake wasn't just about taste, it was about aspiration and adaptation. In a time when fresh seafood wasn't available to everyone, canned or frozen shrimp allowed families inland to experience flavors they associated with coastal luxury. It appeared on holiday tables, weekend dinners, and special occasions when parents wanted to impress guests without breaking the bank. The dish carried an unspoken message: creativity could transform simple ingredients into something memorable. Its delicate flavors and rich textures made it a beloved family favorite, even if its fame has faded over the decades. Today, shrimp and noodle bake might feel like a relic, yet it reflects the resourcefulness and elegance of home cooks who turned every supper into a story worth sharing. Next, we're diving into a hearty, cheesy classic that once dominated dinner plates: ham and scalloped potatoes. Part 04: Ham and Scalloped Potatoes. Few dishes capture the essence of mid-century American comfort food quite like ham and scalloped potatoes. This Betty Crocker favorite was a staple at Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings, embodying both simplicity and indulgence in one golden, creamy casserole. At its heart, the dish was straightforward: thinly sliced potatoes layered with tender pieces of ham, smothered in a rich, buttery cream sauce, and topped with a sprinkling of cheese or breadcrumbs for a perfectly browned crust. The beauty of ham and scalloped potatoes wasn't just in the flavor, it was in the way it brought the table together. Families would gather around the oven-fresh casserole, savoring the aroma of creamy potatoes and smoky ham filling the kitchen. This dish was practical, too. Leftover ham from Sunday roasts could be transformed into a completely new supper, making it an economical choice for many households. Yet, despite its humble origins, it never felt ordinary. The scallop layers offered comfort and familiarity, while the ham added a touch of festivity, making every bite feel celebratory. In the 1950s and 60s, this casserole often appeared at neighborhood potlucks, church socials, and family reunions. Its balance of flavor, texture, and heartiness made it a symbol of care, a dish that said, "I've thought about you and made something special." Over time, as convenience meals and frozen dinners took center stage, ham and scalloped potatoes gradually disappeared from everyday tables. But its memory lingers, tied to slower, cozier times when cooking was an act of love and creativity. This dish reminds us that comfort doesn't have to be complicated, and tradition doesn't need to be fancy. Next up, we'll explore a casserole that brought sophistication and creamy indulgence to the dinner table: turkey tetrazzini. Part 05, Turkey tetrazzini. Turkey tetrazzini. Now there's a dish that whispers of elegance and ingenuity in the American kitchen. Popularized by Betty Crocker in the mid-20th century, this creamy pasta casserole transformed leftover turkey into a luxurious, crowd-pleasing supper. The dish's charm lay in its blend of textures and flavors. Tender chunks of turkey were mixed with spaghetti or egg noodles, smothered in a rich, buttery sauce often enriched with mushrooms, onions, and sometimes a hint of sherry. A topping of breadcrumbs or grated cheese created a golden crust, hiding the creamy comfort beneath. It wasn't just a meal, it was a celebration of resourcefulness, turning yesterday's roast into today's centerpiece. Turkey tetrazzini arrived at tables during post-holiday dinners, especially after Thanksgiving or Christmas, when leftovers threatened to go to waste. Families discovered that with a little creativity, they could craft something sophisticated yet hearty, pleasing children and adults alike. It was the perfect dish for entertaining, a casserole that looked elegant but carried the warmth of home cooking. In mid-century cookbooks, tetrazzini was often presented as the ultimate proof that a housewife could combine economy with taste, sophistication with practicality. It appeared at community potlucks and family gatherings, giving everyone a chance to savor a dish that felt both special and familiar. Over the decades, as dinner trends shifted toward convenience and quick meals, turkey tetrazzini slowly disappeared from everyday kitchens. Yet its legacy endures in the memories of those who grew up with its creamy, comforting flavors. This casserole reminds us that forgotten suppers weren't just meals, they were celebrations of home, creativity, and care. Next, we'll dive into a hearty, stick-to-your-ribs classic that warmed countless American homes: beef stew casserole. Part 06, Beef Stew Casserole. There's something timeless about a bubbling beef stew casserole, the kind that fills the kitchen with a rich, savory aroma and promises warmth on even the coldest evenings. This Betty Crocker classic was a mid-20th century staple, combining hearty ingredients with homey comfort. At its core, the casserole was simple yet satisfying. Chunks of tender beef, slow-cooked with carrots, potatoes, onions, and a savory gravy, created a dish that was both filling and flavorful. Often topped with a layer of biscuits, mashed potatoes, or buttery pastry, it became a complete meal in one dish, perfect for feeding a hungry family. Beef stew casserole wasn't just about convenience, it was about tradition. In post-war America, families cherished dinners where everyone could gather around the table, sharing stories while savoring a hearty, home-cooked meal. The dish carried more than just taste, it carried care. Mothers and grandmothers would often prepare it in the morning, letting it simmer all day, filling the house with the smell of slow-cooked goodness that made coming home a comforting experience. This casserole also appeared at community potlucks and church dinners, celebrated for its ability to stretch ingredients without sacrificing flavor. It was practical, economical, and loved by all ages, embodying the essence of mid-century American home cooking. As convenience foods and quick-fix meals grew in popularity, beef stew casserole gradually disappeared from everyday kitchens. Yet it remains an iconic reminder of a time when cooking was slower, intentional, and deeply rooted in family tradition. Beef stew casserole shows us that forgotten meals weren't just recipes, they were experiences, infused with love, patience, and warmth. Next, we'll explore a lighter, yet equally comforting dish that combined chicken with a simple, satisfying twist: chicken and rice skillet. Part 07, Chicken and Rice Skillet. In mid-century kitchens, simplicity often meant ingenuity, and few dishes captured that better than the chicken and rice skillet. A Betty Crocker favorite, this one-pan wonder was a practical, comforting meal that families relied on when time and ingredients were limited, but taste and warmth were never compromised. The recipe was straightforward: tender pieces of chicken browned in butter, combined with rice, onions, and sometimes diced vegetables, then simmered in a flavorful broth until the grains were perfectly tender. The result was a harmonious blend of textures and flavors, every bite rich with the savory essence of home-cooked comfort. For busy parents, this skillet meal was a lifesaver. It could be prepared quickly, cooked in one pan, and still bring the family together around the dinner table. But this dish was more than convenience. In the post-war years, American families were experimenting with affordable ingredients that could stretch into complete, satisfying meals. Chicken and rice skillet reflected that ingenuity. It was frugal yet hearty, familiar yet adaptable. Home cooks often personalized it, adding a touch of herbs or a sprinkle of cheese to make it feel special. The skillet also represented warmth and togetherness. Children would gather around the stove, watching the meal simmer, while the scent of butter and broth filled the kitchen. Every scoop onto a plate carried memories of care and effort, a subtle reminder that good food could create bonds that lasted a lifetime. Over time, as microwaves and frozen meals became the norm, dishes like chicken and rice skillet quietly disappeared from everyday tables. Yet their legacy endures as a symbol of resourcefulness and home-cooked love. Next, we'll uncover a richer, layered classic, shepherd's pie deluxe, a true centerpiece of mid-century dinners. Part 08, Shepherd's Pie Deluxe. Shepherd's pie deluxe was more than a dish. It was a statement of comfort and creativity on the mid-century American dinner table. Popularized in Betty Crocker cookbooks, this casserole took a humble British classic and elevated it with American flair, turning simple ingredients into a hearty, satisfying centerpiece. At its heart, Shepherd's Pie Deluxe combines seasoned ground beef or lamb with sautéed vegetables, all layered beneath a blanket of creamy mashed potatoes. Some versions added a sprinkling of cheese on top, or a golden crust that formed during baking, making each serving a visually appealing and deeply comforting experience. The layers of meat, veggies, and potatoes worked together to create a dish that was rich in flavor, texture, and nostalgia. This casserole was often made for family dinners, church gatherings, or neighborhood potlucks, offering a warm and filling meal that satisfied both children and adults. It symbolized resourcefulness. Two leftover meat could be transformed into something new, while potatoes stretched the dish to feed a larger crowd. Every bite carried the essence of home-cooked care, from the savory meat to the buttery mashed potato topping. Shepherd's Pie Deluxe also reflected a mid-20th century appreciation for layered, composed meals. It wasn't just about sustenance, it was about presentation and pride. Hostesses could bring the dish to the table with confidence, knowing it would delight both the eyes and the palate. Though today it's rarely seen on dinner tables, Shepherd's Pie Deluxe reminds us of a time when cooking was intentional, ingredients were respected, and meals were crafted with love and creativity. Next up, we'll explore a casserole that lived up to its name with divine flavors and indulgence: Chicken Divine Casserole. Part 09, Chicken Divine Casserole. Chicken Divine Casserole, just the name evokes a sense of elegance and indulgence, and in mid-century American kitchens, it lived up to that reputation. Featured in Betty Crocker cookbooks, this casserole transformed simple chicken into a creamy, flavorful centerpiece that felt special enough for Sunday dinners or small celebrations. The dish was built on tender, cooked chicken, often diced or shredded, mixed with a rich, creamy sauce flavored with butter, milk, and sometimes cream of mushroom soup, a staple in many 1950s recipes. Added vegetables, such as peas or carrots, brought color and nutrition, while a topping of buttery breadcrumbs or shredded cheese created a golden, satisfying crust. Each bite offered a combination of textures, creamy, savory, and slightly crisp on top, delivering comfort in every forkful. Chicken Divine wasn't just about taste, it was about presentation and pride. Home cooks of the era cherished dishes that looked as impressive as they tasted. Bringing this casserole to the table was a statement of care and creativity, it said. I've taken simple ingredients and turned them into something memorable. The casserole also reflected the practicality of the time. Leftover chicken from a roast could be transformed into a luxurious dinner, making the most of available resources while still providing a dish that felt indulgent. It became a favorite for both weeknight meals and more formal gatherings, bridging everyday practicality with special occasion flair. Over the years, convenience foods and evolving tastes pushed Chicken Divine casserole into the background, yet its memory remains for those who grew up enjoying its creamy, comforting layers. Next, we'll uncover a retro classic that combined fun presentation with family-friendly flavors, Tuna's Surprise Ring. Part 10, Tuna's Surprise Ring. Tuna's Surprise Ring was the epitome of mid-century American creativity, a playful, eye-catching casserole that brought both fun and flavor to the dinner table. Popularized by Betty Crocker, this dish turned simple ingredients into a show-stopping centerpiece that families loved, especially during holidays or potlucks. The surprise in Tuna's Surprise Ring was its shape and composition. Cooked pasta, flaked tuna, chopped vegetables, and a creamy binder, often mayonnaise or a cheese sauce, were combined and molded into a ring shape using a bundt or tube pan. When baked or chilled, the ring held its form, creating a visually striking dish that seemed to elevate even the humblest ingredients. Some home cooks garnished it with sliced olives, chopped pimentos, or fresh herbs, adding color and sophistication. Beyond its clever presentation, Tuna's Surprise Ring was practical. Tuna and pantry staples made it affordable, while the one-ring design allowed for easy serving and portioning. It was especially popular during the 1950s and 60s, when casseroles offered both convenience and creativity for busy households. Families could turn everyday items into something festive and memorable, proving that resourcefulness and style could go hand in hand. The dish carried more than just flavor, it carried nostalgia. Children remembered the thrill of seeing the ring sliced for the first time, while parents appreciated its simplicity and the way it could feed a crowd. It symbolized an era when presentation mattered as much as taste, and when home cooks took pride in turning simple ingredients into something extraordinary. Though Tuna's Surprise Ring has largely disappeared from modern dinner tables, it remains a delicious reminder of an era when cooking was part art, part love, and entirely about family. Next, we'll dive into a rich, elegant dish that brought French-inspired flavors into American homes, beef burgundy elegante. Part 11, Beef Burgundy Elegante. Beef burgundy elegante was the kind of dish that brought a touch of European sophistication to mid-century American kitchens. Featured in Betty Crocker cookbooks, it transformed simple beef into a rich, wine-infused casserole that made any dinner feel like a special occasion. At its heart, this casserole was all about depth of flavor. Tender beef chunks were slow-cooked with onions, mushrooms, and a savory sauce made from beef broth and red wine or wine substitutes. Some versions incorporated a creamy element or a topping of buttery breadcrumbs, creating a dish that was both hearty and refined. Every bite carried the aroma of slow-cooked goodness, marrying the earthiness of mushrooms with the rich tenderness of beef. Beef burgundy elegante wasn't just a meal, it was an experience. In post-war America, home cooks were experimenting with flavors inspired by French cuisine, and this casserole offered sophistication without requiring a professional kitchen. It appeared on dinner tables during weekend gatherings, small celebrations, or Sunday family meals, serving as proof that elegance could be achieved with modest ingredients and careful preparation. The dish also reflected practicality. Leftover beef or economical cuts could be transformed into something luxurious, while the combination of sauce, mushrooms, and slow cooking stretched the meal to feed the entire family. In a time when entertaining at home was central to social life, beef burgundy elegante showcased creativity, care, and culinary pride. Though largely forgotten today, this casserole remains a symbol of a period when American kitchens embraced both comfort and refinement. It reminds us that meals could be both practical and luxurious, simple yet sophisticated, and always crafted with love. Next, we'll uncover the final forgotten supper on our list, a true symbol of American indulgence and elegance, Lobster Newberg Supreme. Part 12, Lobster Newberg Supreme. Lobster Newberg Supreme was the ultimate expression of mid-century American indulgence, a dish that brought luxury to the home kitchen without requiring a trip to a fine dining restaurant. Featured in Betty Crocker cookbooks, it transformed the decadent flavors of lobster into a creamy, celebratory casserole that became the centerpiece of special dinners. The dish combined tender lobster meat with a rich, buttery sauce made from cream, eggs, and sherry or cognac, creating a velvety texture that enveloped each bite. Often baked or broiled to achieve a lightly golden top, Lobster Newberg Supreme was as visually striking as it was delicious. Some home cooks garnished it with paprika or parsley, enhancing both color and aroma, making the presentation almost as luxurious as the taste itself. This casserole was more than just a recipe, it was a statement. In an era when home entertaining was an art, serving Lobster Newberg Supreme showed care, sophistication, and a flair for the dramatic. Families would reserve it for holidays, anniversaries, or celebratory dinners, turning a meal into an event. Children marveled at the creamy, flavorful richness, while adults appreciated the elegance and refinement it brought to the table. Lobster Newberg Supreme also represented resourcefulness. While lobster might have seemed extravagant, Betty Crocker's recipes provided accessible methods for home cooks to bring gourmet flavors into their kitchens. It reflected a mid-century desire to elevate home dining, blending practicality with indulgence, and turning ordinary moments into memorable experiences. Though largely forgotten today, Lobster Newberg Supreme stands as a testament to a time when meals were crafted with care, creativity, and a sense of occasion. Its legacy reminds us that forgotten suppers weren't just food, they were memories, celebrations, and stories waiting to be savored again.